Uh-huh. I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast. It is Friday and we are wrapping up our Dynasty rankings with the ever popular position of tight end. We will be talking about our top 25 tight ends. But before that, there is actually a little bit of news going on. Russell Wilson, we talked about the Jameis Winston signing to New York both last Friday as it was breaking. We talked about it a little bit again on Tuesday. And I mentioned if they signed another veteran or something like Russell Wilson, my assumption would be that they aren't planning to take a quarterback in the draft or don't think they can get one. And lo and behold, they signed Russell Wilson for $10.5 million, can be as much as $21 million, I think, with his potential incentives. But Dennis, what do you think of probably the oddest quarterback room in the league? And now there's talk that they are still all in on Shedeur Sanders, so that makes even less sense to me. It was by a narrow thread that Joe Shane and Brian Table made it back for another year, and I feel like this offseason has not been good.
So their two biggest issues are quarterback and offensive line. Now, I think it's safe to say that none of us view Jameis Winston, as much as we like him and his exciting play and ability to go downfield, and Russell Wilson as veteran stopgaps. Neither one of them, or the two of them added together, are not going to preclude you from drafting a quarterback. Now, this isn't a great quarterback class, but it does feel like Shane and Dayball have to go big at the quarterback position, and you have to play the cards that you're dealt. And you're dealt a couple veterans. Now, Russ was paid starter money, low-end starter money, and J-Mo was paid backup money. But I think there's a comfort level with having Jameis Winston as your backup as opposed to Tommy DeVito or a rookie quarterback. Now, I don't know how good a mentor Russell Wilson can be. It kind of feels like that's not his thing. But it feels like Jameis is a mentor. He realizes, well, would he like to be a starter? I'm sure. Is he going to compete for the starting position? I think he's going to do everything he can. But if they roll Russ out as a starter and they draft Shedeur, it's one of those situations where if something happens to Russ mid-game, we're going to Jameis. But maybe if we got a week or 2 weeks of preparation, we're going to roll out Shedeur with Jameis in relief. They need to do something at quarterback. What they've been doing the last couple of years hasn't been great. So if they go Shedeur at 3 and then invest some picks in the offensive line, they need a right tackle. I think they need a center, and maybe a couple guards. They need offensive line. Tyrone Tracy was a breath of fresh air. Malik Neighbors is a bona fide stud. Theo Johnson and Daniel Bellinger make up a competent tight end room. Darius Slayton and Wan'Dale Robinson are, mid replacement level wide receiver 2, 3s. So it's the offensive line and a quarterback. They have to do something because what they were doing wasn't getting them there. So I get it. Is it the route I would have taken? I don't know. Probably not. But again, I'm also not coaching for or team building for my job.
Well, I think the fact they are coaching and team building for their jobs makes it even worse. And in my opinion, I'm kind of like you. I don't know that I would take a quarterback at 3, but the talk recently has been if they're not going to get Sanders, they're going to take Travis Hunter, and that also doesn't. If they were going to go, I could see them taking a running back because I thought Tracy was fine, but that's. I think they should get a running back in a good running back draft. But
if you can get one in the 5th round.
I would take offensive line, defensive line. I wouldn't wait till the 5th round. That's where they got Tyrone Tracy. I do not think he's a long-term answer at the position. You and I very much differ on that. But I probably would take Abdul Carter before I would take Travis Hunter if I was them. Is you have Malik Neighbors. You have some passing options. Either fix your defensive line or fix your offensive line. I mean, especially considering that they're playing Philly and Washington, and Dallas has some pass rushers at least. That's your own division, but who knows? The Giants have not seemed like a competent franchise for the past couple seasons to do a lot to change that for me. The other big signing of a veteran is Stephon Diggs, who signed a 3-year deal with the New England Patriots, obviously a team in need of some wide receiver help. We don't know exactly where he is returning from an ACL that I think was mid-year at best. I think it was late October, if I recall. I'd have to look up, but it was not early in the season. He had 7 or 8 games under his belt. I like Diggs, but I don't think this precludes them from taking. They said it's just under 5 months ago that he tore his. So February, January, December, November. Yeah, it had to have been in October. I think he'll be a good addition. They definitely need pass catchers. I wouldn't say I think the Patriots are done. I thought they might take a wide receiver somewhere. They seem to have been looking at, although if Abdul Carter drops them at 4, I'm guessing that's what Mike Vrabel is going to want to go for. But there are some wide receiver options that I think would be interesting for them. But do you like Diggs? Do you like at least getting a good, solid veteran receiver to pair with Drake May?
Yeah, I think he can bring some stability. Maybe he can be what they hope Kendrick Bourne would be. Bourne is a guy that's been super inconsistent throughout his career. He'll have some really nice stretches, and then he gets injured. If Diggs can be healthy all season, I think they only guaranteed $27 million out of $69 million. Yeah. So it isn't like it's going to be cumbersome to get out of. And he's a veteran guy, and that's something I think that Mike Vrabel is looking for to add to that wide receiver room, to teach guys like Kayshon Boutte and Pop Douglas and Jalen Polk and whoever else they might bring in there. What it means to be a top-level NFL wide receiver. He's going to have to work a little harder now because he's older and a couple injuries, and his reputation has taken a hit over the last 2 or 3 seasons. And, he's probably lost a half a step at least, but he was still getting open in Houston. He looked good before he got injured. So it makes okay sense to me, given the amount of cap space they have and the other options. Unfortunately, New England is in the unenviable position right now of having to overpay to get free agents in there while they turn the team around. And we see that cycle move around the league with teams where they become a dumpster fire, and then you have to start to overpay. We saw it with the Jaguars and Christian Kirk. We've seen it in Cleveland. You see it bounce around the league. Carolina's done it more recently, and it's just kind of the nature of the game when you're on the downswing and you're trying to break your fortunes in the other direction. You got to overpay a little bit and bring some people in there that you hope can change the culture. And I think that's what New England did. Bringing Vrabel in was the intention, was we got to change the culture. Now let's get some veterans in here to help change the culture. And so it does make sense. I'm cautiously optimistic about what he's going to be able to actually deliver. Honestly, at cost, I probably still want Kayshon Boutte.
This might be the first time in his career, at least in a long time, that anyone's talked about Stephon Diggs being a veteran brought in to help change the culture in a good way.
For sure.
Last bit of news: Jets added Josh Reynolds, and I wanted to bring this up because we were kind of excited for our friend there, Justin Fields, who's their quarterback, and his reunion with Garrett Wilson. But now this reshaped wide receiver core. Let me tell you who they've got right now. The Garrett Wilson is there. They decided they were going to keep Al Lazard, at least for the time being. Josh Reynolds and Tyler Johnson have been added. They have Xavier Gibson and Malachi Corley. We know they lost Tyler Conklin, but outside of Wilson, that is not an inspiring group. I think Reynolds maybe makes some sense because he was in that Detroit offense for a while, probably a little bit familiar with their passing game concepts.
Yeah, and honestly, Reynolds is, I guess, he's the new Alan Lazard. Yeah, so far Lazard's, nothing says dump him for a 7th-round pick like the Jets signing Josh Reynolds to basically be the new Alan Lazard, to teach the offense, make sure the receivers know what they're doing. They don't have any depth. Tyler Johnson, Xavier Gibson, and Malachi Corley have some potential as slot guys, but Josh Reynolds is, he's a glue guy. I think he's a solid veteran presence. He isn't going to be a threat to Garrett Wilson. He's probably going to have a couple wide receiver 3 games, but he's there to kind of expedite the grasp of the passing concepts that is it Tanner Eggstrom, is that his name? Brought over with him from Detroit and the Ben Johnson offense. I don't hate the signing. I like him better as the wide receiver 4 than the wide receiver 2 at this stage of his career. But hey, it is what it is. They'll probably add somebody in the draft. Maybe they make a trade for a veteran.
I haven't given up hope that Malachi Corley is going to be something. I liked that pick last year, but few people had as dreadful a rookie contribution campaign.
Like there's another receiver there, but I think he does a lot more special team stuff that's popped off a little bit, but I forget his name.
I looked at their depth chart. That was pretty much everything that was on there right now. Of note, they have some. So it might be some people left because
he might not be of note either. So,
well, I looked at their roster. I didn't realize that's where Zach Evans had landed either. Zach Evans, the running back, went to join that running back room there. I know what you're talking about. There was some kind of special teams guy. I think those guys are gone. They're not listing on the roster anymore, which, it's time of year where there's turnover and whatnot. Well, I mentioned that their tight end, who was a part of their passing game, Tyler Conklin, had moved on. That's a good segue to We're finishing up our dynasty rankings, going to be looking at our top 25 tight ends. So, Dennis, why don't you kick it off with 25 through 13?
All right, so 25, I got Mike Gesicki. Real tempted to try to move him up higher because of that offense. But when you look back at last year, it really was don't start him unless T. Higgins is out. And we know that they spent a ton of money on Higgins and Chase. Chase Brown also popped off, and so he's going to get significant run in the ground game. Zach Moss is going to be healthy. I think Gesicki will be him and Andre Yosevich, and heck, even Charlie Jones will kind of flit around at that third receiver on any given week. But Gesicki's going to be 30 during the season. It's not like he's still some young guy. He's going into his 8th season, I think. 7th season. He's been in the league for a little while now. And while he's a good pass catcher, they like Eric All. And when Eric All comes back from his injury, I wouldn't be surprised to see him start to push Gesicki because he's more of a all-around tight end. He can block a little bit better while he's still being a nice pass-catching option. But Gesicki signed a 3-year contract extension, and while it's not overwhelming money, they can keep him around, and he can be productive, as we've seen. Number 24, I got Dalton Schultz. He tied for tight end 20 last year. It was a pretty disappointing season for a lot of Houston passing options. CJ Stroud didn't quite have the season that we had hoped. Schultz is a little older as well, 28 years old, I think. Still, I think, pretty good. I think Cade Stover is going to push him some. He's just younger and a little more athletic at this stage of both of their careers. But I got Dalton Schultz at 24. Hunter Henry at 23. He finished tight end 12 last year. The potential is there for him to have another good year. But again, this is another guy that's getting up there in age. He's a consistent player. He's going to be on the field. He's good in all phases of the game, so you don't have to take him off. But he's not a threat, a deep threat. He can be a red zone threat. He's a chain mover. But as that offense improves, with Diggs, with Vrabel's emphasis on rebuilding the lines, Kayshon Boutte taking a step this year, the potential is there for that team in general to spread the ball around a little more, go downfield a little more. So I've got Hunter Henry at tight end 12. 22, I got Chigo Okonkwo. I look for all kinds of reasons to put him higher because he is a nice athletic tight end. But that quarterback position, like we're literally sitting here hoping they don't do something stupid and not draft Cam Ward. But I don't know over the next couple of years how much I want to invest in Chigo Okonkwo if he's got a rookie quarterback coming in and taking over. Will Levis, not accurate. I know they signed some other quarterback of insignificance, but Okonkwo is a decently talented player. He just is in a situation where it's tough to rely on him being productive. 21, I got Jatavian Sanders. Sanders finished as tight end 36 last year. In his rookie year, he's a very athletic tight end, and they didn't re-sign Ian Thomas. They re-signed somebody else who's more of a blocking guy.
They re-signed Tommy Tremble.
He's a little more athletic than a straight blocking guy, but it feels like coming back from the injury, Jatavian Sanders has a chance to really establish himself as a middle-of-the-field threat. He's got pretty good speed. And if Bryce Young can develop the seam, that's going to provide Sanders with some real opportunity to be productive. Number 20, I got Cade Otton. Again, here's a guy who often gets pushed down the priority list because of his wide receivers. And then when Rashad White starts catching 10 balls a game, we've seen him be very productive, and we've seen him be the forgotten man. He's a guy that I think if he landed in a situation where he could get consistent volume, he would produce on a week-to-week basis. I just don't think he gets consistent volume. Overall, finished at tight end 13 last year, but it was a lot of up and down weeks. Cole Kmet at tight end 19. Never been a huge Kmet fan. Keenan Allen leaving is definitely going to be good for him. I'm not sure what's going to happen with the Ben Johnson offense. There's definitely a drop-off from Sam Laporta to Cole Kmet, but Chicago has Rome Odunze and DJ Moore, DeAndre Swift. There's a lot of talk they're going to take another running back that's going to be a priority guy. They've invested a ton of money in their offensive line during free agency, and there's still talk they're going to draft an offensive lineman high. I like Kmet. I just don't know that the volume is going to be there for him. Number 18, I got Pat Freiermuth, another guy that has a questionable quarterback situation. It looks like Aaron Rodgers is going to go there, but if Aaron Rodgers doesn't, they're rolling out Mason Rudolph, or maybe they draft a rookie. I've seen several drafts that have them taking Jackson Dart at 21. Seen some drafts with them taking a quarterback with their second round pick. There's just a lot of questions there. And then Darnell Washington is a weapon, mismatch at the tight end position at 6'7". We've seen him have some flashes in the passing game because of that size, be a real red zone weapon. Adding DK Metcalf along with George Pickens, it feels like there's a lot of mouths to feed in the passing game there now, and they don't have anything but baby spoons at the quarterback position. Number 17, I got Dallas Goedert. I really wanted to put Goddard higher because it is a narrow funnel in Philadelphia, but they've basically said, look, somebody come and take this guy off our hands. They want to trade him. They don't want to, they're ready to move on from him. He's almost 30. I think he's going to be, I think he's 29. Maybe he is 30 or going to be 30 this season. Surprisingly older than I expected. But I think some of that was just being buried the first couple years behind Ertz, so you didn't really notice him. He's a good tight end. I just think that passing game is going to funnel through A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. And then they got Saquon Barkley, who's a phenomenal pass catcher out of the backfield. Now, they don't use him a ton in that regard. I'm not anti-Dallas Goedert. It just feels like being able to count on him on a week-to-week basis is going to be nerve-wracking. 16, I got Isaiah Likely. You may be asking yourself, well, Dennis, why do you have a backup tight end this high over these other starters? We've seen Isaiah Likely perform. Baltimore uses a two tight end offense. I'm not going to be like, my jaw isn't going to hit the floor if Baltimore makes a draft day trade and moves Mark Andrews. They like Charlie Kolar, who's their third tight end, and likely can move right into the Mark Andrews role. We've seen him do that when Andrews has missed time. And he's a younger guy. He's 25 or maybe 26. So he's still fairly young. Lots of potential there. And he's a fairly athletic tight end. Number 16, I got Brenton Strange. It's going into his third year, maybe just his second, but they moved Evan Ingram. We're hoping that Trevor Lawrence starts to, measure up to the potential he showed in college. Strange played well enough in Evan Ingram's absence that they were comfortable letting Evan Ingram go. He's a good athlete, good pass catcher, and he's young. And so I kind of went, here's where I took an opportunity to put some chips on a young guy to break out. Number 14, I got Jake Ferguson. He's right now he's the number 2 target in Dallas. I think Tolbert's going to climb up above him, but he's still a guy that I expect to get a lot of targets. As long as he can stay healthy, he's going to be on the field. Prescott's going to look for him. He's going to be productive. And at number 13, I got your boy Evan Ingram. Coming off an injury year, had a mediocre career in New York, was a 1,000-yard receiver in Jacksonville, really performed well for Jacksonville. He's getting older, but he went to an offense where they want to use the tight. They want to use an athletic tight end in multiple ways to get them the ball, give them opportunities. Evan Ingram brings that to the table. Whether it comes to fruition or whether he gets Kirk Cousined and they bring in a Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland, and now all of a sudden Ingram's back at the second tight end position and they've got themselves a new joker. Right now, I'm kind of betting on Sean Payton to use him pretty productively for the next couple years.
It's not great for you. I wouldn't bet on Sean Payton to use anyone consistently or productively for fantasy. You were right about Strange. He's going into year 3. He is 24, has a December birthday, so he won't turn 25 until December 27th. You and I have the same number 25, Mike Gesicki. I liked what he did and his fit there in Cincinnati. Getting a 3-year deal is encouraging, but he's still the 3rd, 4th, or 5th option at best, depending on who's out there and who's having a day. Usually, I have Dalton Schultz at 24. I really like that signing when they made it. I thought he had some good seasons in Dallas, but he's kind of a hit or miss tight end too in his time there with Houston. Even when they were down on receivers last year, they didn't go to him a ton. He hasn't been a great fit, I don't think, with Stroud, with some of these other pieces. I have Cole Kmet at 23. I know he's a younger guy that we think has some potential, but he just kills you in fantasy. He's super boom or bust. They have other receivers. They have other passers. I need to see something consistent from him before I want to throw him in a lineup. I have Hunter Henry at 22. He's been a good player there for the Patriots. One of the reasons they brought him back. They are improving their wide receiver core. I think he's Mr. Steady and Mr. Reliable, but kind of a tight end too for me. Zach Ertz, going back to a place where he was tight end 7 last year. I think that was probably the best option for him, is to go back to Washington, where he has good chemistry. Is it a long-term? I don't know, but I would still be pretty excited about his upside this year. And honestly, when I'm looking at tight ends, there's 4 that I feel real good about. There's a couple in the rest of the tight end 1 group that I think have potential, but it's a mixture of veterans who have some upside, young players who could have some upside with opportunities. I don't think I feel super solid about this group, so that was kind of hard slotting everybody in. I have Noah Gray at 20. I think they like him. He fits what they're trying to do. Still going to be the number 2 guy behind Travis Kelce for at least 1 more year. But what happens after that? They had extended him last year. I thought that was interesting. They've used him quite a bit more last year. Is that trend up? We're going to continue. I have Jake Ferguson at 19. I think he's a fine producer there in Dallas. I believe he's at the end of his rookie deal this year. We've seen Dallas be kind of a place where they use you until your deal is up and then move on to the next guy at tight end. And that would give me some pause in terms of his long-term value. He did not have a great season last year. I still don't know what to make of Dallas's offense in general. So I just have him a little bit lower. I have Jonnu Smith at 18. I thought he had a fantastic 2024. He's been productive in a couple of different places. Miami, another offense I don't feel great about. They have some good wide receivers and some other emerging pieces. Is he going to continue to have that kind of volume he had last year? I don't feel sold about that. I have Brenton Strange at 17. Like you said, he stepped in very well, had 53 targets, caught 40 passes last year for 411 yards and a couple of touchdowns. Looked really good when he was in there filling in for Evan Ingram. Still a lot of questions about that offense too. That's kind of a theme, with some of these guys. I, like you, have Isaiah Likely at 16. He produces on his own, even with Mark Andrews. Is there potential he could go even bigger in the future? Sure. But at this point, we also don't, we don't know. Could he end up being a guy they move on from and replace too? He's getting towards the end of that initial window. How much are they going to want to pay to keep him? I have TJ Hawkinson at 15. I think he's a fine veteran tight end, but they have other options in Minnesota. What's the passing volume going to be? We saw him be an okay contributor, but at times other tight ends like Josh Oliver on his own team actually outproduced him when he was in the lineup. I don't think it's a lock that he goes back to being top 12 kind of production. I feel much better with him kind of in the tight end 2 range. I have Evan Ingram at 14. There's some potential there, but we've seen injuries hamper him of late. There was inconsistency that sometimes hampered him early in his career. He found a couple of magical seasons there in Jacksonville. Can that be reproduced? Or, like you said, it makes me nervous being here. They keep talking about how Denver has continued to look at Colson Loveland, and I think if he's there, there's a good chance they're taking him still, which then begs the question. It's a 2-year deal for Ingram. It's not incredibly high money. What will the split be? It wouldn't be the first time we've seen this Denver GM splash out to get a veteran player that they don't intend to play. And it wouldn't be the first time we've seen a player come into a Sean Payton system here and end up being frustrating in their usage. And then 13, I have Travis Kelce. I think he'll probably finish top 12 again. I think this is probably his last year, and it feels improbable to put him as a top 12 option anymore, even though he probably, if we were doing redraft rankings, I wouldn't feel that bad about slotting him up there. But for dynasty rankings, if you're a contender going for the championship this year, he's the kind of player that you slot in at your tight end. If you're not at that championship level, or if you're rebuilding, he should not still be on your roster, because that feels like a sunk asset.
Yeah, he's the guy you should be expecting to sunset if you're rostering him now and not going to move him.
Yep.
He should go in your fantasy team Ring of Honor. Where he goes.
There you go. I mean, he's had a great career, and it's not, I don't think he's done because he's bad. It seems very much like even when he said he was going to play again, it was, I'm going to finish out my contract. So those contracts up
right
this year. So,
well, when you were talking about Noah Gray, I don't have Noah Gray in my top 25, and he's a guy that I wrestled with trying to figure out, like, where does he belong in there? And I went around and around and around, because it feels like, he's going to be the successor to Travis Kelce. He's also going to be 27 after this year, 28 going into next year. And so, and while tight ends can play longer, it feels like with Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice, it feels like we're going to see an evolution in that offense away from the tight end production. And because of his age, like, he'll still be useful. He may end up being, a high-end tight end 2 for a couple seasons, maybe even a low-end tight end 1. But right now, I just kind of, when I looked at it, I felt like he's not the kind of asset that I'm expecting to come in and kind of blow the roof off the doors and step right in where Kelsey was and take over. He's looked pretty good, but I do have some concerns about, we've seen that team with Patrick Mahomes evolve as things happen. They went, they got rid of Tyreek Hill. They went away from Kareem Hunt in the running game, and they went away from offense in general and became defense oriented the last couple of seasons. And so I'm not
I will
sure.
say though, despite Travis Kelce being in the lineup, Noah Gray had better stats than Brenton Strange. He had on fewer targets. He had 49 targets, caught 40 for 437 and 5 touchdowns. He had more yardage, more touchdowns on 4 fewer targets. So that's that's why I'm, that's with Kelce being out there being tight end 5. So even if he remains in a complimentary, I don't see actually how that's that much different than Isaiah Likely, to be honest.
I guess it's the 3 years difference in their age for me.
Well, I mean, Likely 42 receptions for 477 yards and 6 touchdowns on 58 targets. So they're all kind of right in the same range, and that's why I end up
pointing. Yeah, I mean, we're shuffling cards here with some of these guys.
I think you might be more optimistic about tight ends in general than me. There were 4 guys I liked, and then after that, it was more like, oh shit, I guess I have to go somewhere.
I had to rank 40 of them or 25 of them because that's what we were doing. So
yeah, and there's a lot of guys that I want to have hope for that I just they haven't exactly given us. Like you mentioned, Theo Johnson. I liked a couple of the games we saw from him, but I don't know. Jatavian Sanders, Ben Sinnott. I mean, those are all young guys that I want to have hope for, but I don't feel great about the path to touches. You liked Eric All too, and I kind of liked him, but then he tore his knee.
Yeah.
And so he's out for a year, and they re-signed Mike Gesicki for 3 years. It's like, how do you feel good about some of this? So with that being said, I think the man that we were just talking about leads off your top 12.
Yeah. So I got Travis Kelce at 12. Probably too high, given that in all likelihood it's his last year. But, I mean, I'm going to show the man some respect and make him my last tight end 1. He's been an elite tight end for the better part of the last, decade. So I got him at tight end 12. Number 11, I have an enigma is the tight end at 11. That's Kyle Pitts. I tried to put him up higher. I wanted to put him up higher. I wanted to believe that Michael Penix is going to unlock Kyle Pitts. And in a nutshell, I just decided I wasn't going to get burned again. And I hope he just completely crushes this ranking. I hope over the next 3 years, Penix unlocks him, and with Drake London and Darnell Mooney and Bijan Robinson, that offense just takes off and explodes and is a dynasty bonanza. But right now, he's young still. He's an exceptionally good athlete for his size. I'm going to keep him in my tight end 1s, but I'm also not going to be surprised if he finishes as tight end 18. Number 10, I got Jonnu Smith. I know he's 30. He was tight end 4 last year. It feels to me like he's in a role, in a place where they're going to use him for a couple years and then move on. Could go completely to hell because we've seen him, appear and disappear over the course of his career. And I know Arthur Smith isn't in Miami, so that may screw up 2 straight years of Jonnu Smith being productive. But he was just so good last year. It feels to me like Mike McDaniel is going to be like, man, I think I'm on to something here. Let me use that. If Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill both explode and are top 10, top 15 wide receivers again, I could see this going completely out the window. Number 9, I got Dalton Kincaid. Still young. He was tight end 26 last year, didn't get the volume. Buffalo's still a pretty high volume passing game. And they haven't really added a ton to their wide receiver room yet. Kincaid had some injuries last year and stuff. So I just feel like, he's got to be a tight end one, right? He's Dalton Kincaid. He's young. He's athletic. He's a good tight end. Number 8, I've got David Njoku. I finished as tight end 10 last year, 29 years old, another tight end with a questionable quarterback situation. It's awful to sit here and say, Kenny Pickett might be the best quarterback he's played with in the last 5 or 6 years. But, he's a talented guy, very athletic, can go get the ball, gets the drops sometimes, but he's coming off, the best phase of his career. And I feel like he's in a position to, Kevin Stefanski coordinates that offense with him as a primary function in it. Number 7, I got Mark Andrews. He was tight end 30 last year, or he's going to be 30. He was tight end 6 last year. He's going to be 30. I feel like we're lying to ourselves if we think that Baltimore isn't going to try to move him within the next 12 months. Under Ozzie Smith,
you never know.
I know, Eric DeCosta is an Ozzie Smith disciple, and they make decisions based on, they're looking down the road and, bringing in DeAndre Hopkins and Zay Flowers taking off. Rashad Bateman finally maturing and turning into a thing. Charlie Kohler being there and Isaiah Likely. It just feels like, Andrews could get a new home. I don't know where that is, but even if he doesn't, I feel like we could start to see a dip in the volume. Number 6, I got George Kittle. Finished his tight end 2 last year. Honestly, the majority of this is that he's going to be 32. I know that's not ancient in tight end years, but he plays tough. He gets injured. He's willing to sacrifice himself, and that offense can survive without him. And so with an aging offensive line that's going to need some help, he could end up getting taken out of the game because he's always blocking. So I feel like there could be some inconsistencies for him this year. I'm still in on TJ Hawkinson. I got him at tight end 5. Come off his injury. I get it. Josh Oliver had some good games last year, but I think Hawkinson was still, working his way back, getting everything together. Rookie quarterback may give me a little bit of pause there. We'll see what happens with J.J. McCarthy. Can he really step up and help them not miss a beat? Is Kevin O'Connell really the quarterback whisperer? I think we're going to find out this year. Number 4, I went and, I went a little exciting here. I went with Tucker Kraft. He feels like the one reliable pass catcher in Green Bay. I think Jordan Love is the real deal. He's going to be the guy there. Is he ever going to be the quarterback one? Probably not. They got a really strong running game with Josh Jacobs, and they've got 4 or 5 very good wide receivers. Just none of them are the guy. And it feels like if you're going to roster at cost anybody in that Green Bay passing offense, Tucker Kraft is the guy. He's a 3-down tight end, good size, good pass catcher. I'm probably too high on him, but that's my guy there. Number 3, I got Sam Laporta. finished his tight end 8 last year, had a really slow start. Then he picked it up some, finished his tight end 8, immensely talented young guy. Speaking of immensely talented young guys, Trey McBride at number 2. This is Dynasty, and McBride is a super productive tight end. I don't think his production wanes, even with Kyler Murray continually not throwing for 4,000 yards. I think McBride will continue to produce high-end tight end numbers. And at tight end 1, I don't see how you can put anybody but Brock Bowers there. I think Geno Smith's going to use him up. They don't have a bona fide wide receiver 1. They don't have a bona fide running game yet. So I think they're going to improve those positions. And I think Jacoby Myers is a really good wide receiver, just he's not an alpha. So I got Brock Bowers at number 1.
Yeah, so for me, I have a combination of some veterans that I think are still producing and some young guys that maybe I'm still not ready to give up on. I have Cade Otton at 12. I thought he had a really good season last year. There's a lot of competition in Tampa Bay, but when I was looking at some of those younger guys and some of the other guys and considering where I might put them, Cade Otton was one of the few guys that was the tight end 1 for several weeks last year. Got hurt. That kind of kiboshed his overall finish at the end, but I still really like him and his potential, so I have him up there. Dallas Goedert at 11, he could be traded. I think he's still been real productive when he's out there. He was still real productive for the Eagles when he was out there. And I just don't feel great or confident about a lot of these players, so he's still makes it in there. Same kind of with Mark Andrews at 10. I don't disagree with you about him potentially getting moved, but I mean, he's still producing, and I think he still has a few years left. I also have Dalton Kincaid like you at 9. Last year was really disappointing. I thought last year was going to be the breakout, but sometimes it takes a little bit of time. I think Buffalo is still building that pass game, still trying to figure it out, and I still have hope. I'm not ready to quit on him. I have Pat Freiermuth at 8. I know you had him a little bit lower. The quarterback situation maybe gives a little bit of pause, but outside of 2023 when he was injured and missed a huge chunk of the season, Freiermuth has been good for 60 or more receptions in each season. He has 18 touchdowns in 4 years, and he's playing with an offensive coordinator that we know loves to pepper the tight end. As long as their name isn't Kyle Pitts. I mean, this was the same offense where he made a lot of tight ends relevant. I think Arthur Smith found a guy he likes in Pat Freiermuth. I mean, he's had right around that, between 90 and upper 70s in target range in 3 of those years, excluding the year that he got injured. I think he just fits what they're kind of do, that Steelers mentality. And I don't feel sold on a lot of guys. I have Tucker Kraft at 7. I'm not that far away from you. I really liked what he did. He has definitely separated himself a lot from Luke Musgrave, because I remember when they were coming out, some people wanted to bet on Musgrave and some were betting on Kraft, who I think went around later than him in the draft, but we thought was a better pass catcher. Really showed it last year. I have Kyle Pitts at 6. He's still a young player. I still have hope that offense is getting in shape. He's, despite the fact that he's been there for a while, he's still only 24 years old. And there was just a lot of raw talent that we liked coming in. It hasn't all come together for him in Atlanta. Maybe it never will in Atlanta, but I'm just not ready to give up hope. I have David Njoku at 5. I like him. He's definitely getting older. I have a couple guys that are maybe a little older that are up in the top 25, but I like what he brings to Cleveland. He seems to be, if I had to bet on one piece of the passing game in Cleveland, it's sure as heck going to be Njoku and not Jerry Jeudy. as you well know. So that would be the one I'm betting on. I have Sam Laporta at 4. Had an amazing rookie year, had a great year last year, but there are a lot of other options, and I think Jameson Williams is starting to come on a little bit. So that has me with him a little bit lower. I have George Kittle at 3. Yes, he's older. Yes, he's prone to injuries, but when he's out there, it's pretty magic. And that they moved on from Debo. We saw him really carrying the passing game at times last year. I think he is a great match with that team. You said you couldn't imagine him at anything at 1, but I have Brock Bowers at 2, and I have Trey McBride at 1. I think they're both great. I don't think you can go wrong with either of them, and I like both of them. So before we get out of here, let me ask you a couple of questions. Who's your biggest riser in this group?
For me, it was pretty easily Brenton Strange. It all comes down to path to opportunity, and right now there's not a whole heck of a lot in front of him. And despite his underperformance for most of his career, I still think that Trevor Lawrence is a pretty good passer. And so I think he can. We've seen him use Evan Ingram pretty effectively throughout Ingram's tenure. And so I think Strange has the potential to slot right in, take over, not miss a beat. I've got him sitting at tight end 15. He's a guy I could see pushing into the top 12 even. So he's my biggest riser. Probably Sanders would have been next, but I have Strange ranked higher in the rankings, so I went with him.
Yeah, I think Strange has certainly jumped up there quite a bit. Who is a guy in this top 25 range that you think has the biggest risk to just fall right out?
I'm going to pull a couple guys here, and that's Chigo Okonkwo and Pat Freiermuth. Okonkwo, because we just don't know what's happening at quarterback. I think the expectation is it's going to be Cam Ward. But we've also seen a rookie quarterback can face plant. And if that happens and they have to go to Will Levis, maybe Levis isn't even on the team. And I don't know, Callahan or Boyle or whoever, whatever, UFL reject is on the Titans bench there. It could look not great, Bob. Freiermuth, it's a combination of what might happen at quarterback. And I do think Darnell Washington is a threat to Pat Freiermuth's volume. Freiermuth has had some really nice games, but adding DK Metcalf to go along with George Pickens, they don't have much going on at the running game with Jaylen Warren right now. But I think there is some risk of Freiermuth dropping out of the top 25.
The one I'm going to go with is Jonnu Smith. And he had an amazing year last year, but saw 111 targets. And not only was that by far his most in his career, that is well out of line with what the Dolphins had done at tight end under Mike McDaniel. Now Smith may be a better tight end, but Mike Gesicki is who he had when he first started, and none of his tight ends had more than 52 targets in a season. And part of the reason they were so heavily targeting Smith was the injuries to Hill and Waddle. Was the first time in a while Waddle was below 100 targets. Hill also came way down. The year prior, Hill had like 155 targets, only 123, and I say only because that's still quite good. But that was also in part because of the mess that they had at quarterback. And so it makes me a little bit nervous if you go back to those receivers putting up 120 plus targets, it's going to come at the expense of a tight end, which they hadn't really been using. So that is probably my biggest fear.
Yeah, they jettisoned Mike Gesicki for Durham Smythe.
Yeah, and then gave Durham Smythe was their leading target getter with like 38. So
right.
We've asked this about other positions. Of the incoming rookies, do you think any will crack your top 25?
Yeah, and landing spot will play a little bit into it. It's Dynasty, and we're looking at youth. Tyler Warren and Colson Loveland are most certainly gonna
They
have
could
a
crack
chance.
top 12.
Yeah, they both. I don't want to say they're going to be overdrafted, but teams are looking for the next Brock Bowers right now. That's they're chomping at the bit, and those are the two guys in this draft that I think teams can be like, oh, this can be my Brock Bowers. But if I'm looking at the other tight ends, it really comes down to, what does it look like in front of them? Elijah Arroyo's a pretty athletic tight end out of Miami. Mason Taylor, he's got the bloodline. I don't know if I'm sold on Harold Fannin. I think because he played at a smaller school, he may need a little more time. So not that I really expect any of the others to make it in there. Mostly just wanted to say their names so people think I know what I'm talking about.
Well, speaking of the names of rookies, we're closing the door on March, and that'll do it for us today. We've talked about the veterans as we looked at Dynasty rankings. April is about the rookies and about the draft. And that kicks off on Tuesday. No joke, April 1st will be our first show. No?
Monday. I have a game Tuesday.
Oh, it's not on your schedule.
Oh, isn't it? All right, I'll have to go check. Oh, no. Next
you
week,
have spring break.
Yeah, spring break. Never mind.
Yes,
sorry.
You're messing with me. You were trying to pull that early April Fool's joke.
I'm 60 now. I'm allowed to forget stuff.
But Tuesday we will be here talking rookie QBs. We'll look at the top 10. We'll talk about some rookie QBs. And then next Friday we'll look at running backs. The following week we will be on Monday. We will be on Mondays throughout April, except for April 14th, where we will not have any show on Monday that week, just on Friday. That is the week of, I think that's the week the NFL draft kicks off.
Well, that Monday is also my wife's birthday, so.
Well, you gotta have. I might be off.
I like my studio. I don't want to live here though.
Yeah, I might be off on. That feels too early for the draft. I have to go back and look.
No, the draft is the end of the month.
Yeah, so we will have no show that week, but we will be looking at rookies as we go through and talking about all that. So we look forward to seeing you on Tuesday. Dennis, if the people have some free time on their hands, what can they do?
So did you see Cam Scattaboo ran a 4.65?
No.
I don't think it affects his stock at all. That's kind of where everybody expected him to be. I don't know about you. I'm going to play with my new Kiss dolls that I got for my birthday. So I had about 25 years ago, my wife got me a set of Kiss figurines, and I haven't opened them. I'm not going to open them. But Gene and Paul were from one series, and Eric Carr and Ace were from a different series. It's probably been 25 years, and I never said anything. And I never really want anything when it comes to presents for my birthday. And this year I was sitting here in the studio because I have them up on the wall. And I thought, I'm going to ask for the opposite two of each of these sets so I can get full sets. So the boys got me, one of them got me Peter and Ace for the Kiss Alive version. And the other one got me Gene and Paul for the Creatures of the Night version. So I'm pretty stoked to kind of get them all up on the wall here. So, but anyways, enough about me. Go to your favorite podcast platform, hit that search bar, type in the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast, give us a rating and a review, subscribe. We love it.
Well, that'll do it for us today. We will see you on Tuesday. Until then, have a wonderful weekend.